Sure. Here's a 1,000-word expansion of Part 1 of Mr. Millionaire Stories, where betrayal meets revenge, written in a gripping storytelling style without any headings. The rain had just begun to fall in thin, hesitant drops, tapping against the tall glass windows of Adrian Cole's penthouse. From the 47th floor, the city looked like a glittering sea of ambition and betrayal, every light in every building a reminder of deals struck, secrets buried, and power games being played. Adrian stood with a glass of scotch in his hand, his reflection superimposed against the skyline, a man who had everything, yet carried a darkness most people could never imagine. To the world, Adrian was the golden figure of success. The kind of man magazines wrote about, the sort of billionaire who graced talk shows and charity galas, shaking hands with world leaders and signing million-dollar checks for causes he didn't care about. But the headlines never spoke about how he got there, the price of his empire, or the ghosts of loyalty and trust that lingered in the corridors of his memory. Tonight, however, he couldn't escape them. Tonight, those memories came clawing back. It all began 5 years earlier, when Adrian was not yet the untouchable titan he was now. Back then, he was ambitious, reckless, and dangerously trusting. He had two people he thought he could rely on more than anyone: his childhood friend Marcus Hale and his fiancée, Evelyn Cross. Marcus was more than a friend, he was practically a brother, the one who shared secrets with him since they were kids running through the cracked sidewalks of their old neighborhood. Evelyn, on the other hand, was the woman who had been by Adrian's side from the moment his dreams were too big for the world to take seriously. She believed in him when others laughed. She loved him when all he had was ambition and the scent of desperation clinging to his clothes. Or so he thought. The betrayal didn't happen overnight. That's what hurt Adrian the most. It wasn't a single stab to the back but a slow, calculated poisoning. Marcus had always been charming, always had a way with people, especially women. But Adrian ignored the little signs, the stolen glances between Marcus and Evelyn when they thought he wasn't looking, the sudden excuses Evelyn made when Adrian was too busy, the way Marcus always found a reason to linger whenever she was around. Adrian told himself he was imagining it. He told himself trust was stronger than suspicion. He told himself love was unshakable. He was wrong. The deal that changed everything came one summer, a high-stakes contract with one of the largest tech conglomerates in Asia. Adrian had worked night and day to make it happen, pulling favors, burning money he didn't have, and risking his entire reputation on promises that had to be kept. Marcus was his partner in the deal, the one he trusted with the numbers, the one who handled the final negotiations when Adrian was stuck in meetings on the other side of the world. But when Adrian returned, papers signed, champagne flowing, he discovered the empire he thought he was building had been stolen right out from under him. Marcus hadn't signed the deal for them, he had signed it for himself. Overnight, Marcus Hale became a millionaire, hailed as a genius entrepreneur. Adrian was left with debts, lawsuits, and humiliation. And in the middle of the chaos, Evelyn disappeared. She didn't call, didn't explain, didn't even leave a note. Within months, Adrian saw the photographs plastered across glossy magazines, Marcus and Evelyn, arm in arm, smiling like they were born for betrayal. Adrian's empire crumbled, but something inside him didn't die, it hardened. Every sleepless night, every newspaper headline mocking his downfall, every whispered pity behind his back became fuel. He vanished from the public eye for nearly 2 years, letting the world believe he was finished. But in the shadows, Adrian was learning, plotting, building piece by piece. He studied markets, infiltrated industries, created shell companies that no one could trace back to him. Where Marcus thought Adrian was licking his wounds, Adrian was laying traps. By the 3rd year, Adrian had returned to the game. Only this time, he wasn't just another ambitious player, he was the architect of something far bigger, far darker. He made deals with people Marcus wouldn't dare shake hands with. He bought influence in places that never appeared on paper. And slowly, carefully, Adrian began pulling the strings of Marcus's empire from behind the curtain. Now, 5 years later, Adrian stood at the top, his wealth towering over Marcus's fading fortune. Marcus didn't know it yet, but every failure, every collapsed investment, every betrayal Marcus suffered in recent months had Adrian's fingerprints on it. Evelyn didn't know that the lavish life she thought she had secured was built on sand, and that sand was slipping faster than she could hold it together. Adrian swirled the scotch in his glass, the golden liquid catching the light like liquid fire. He wasn't celebrating, no, not yet. Revenge was not about striking back quickly. It was about timing, precision, watching your enemies dance on the illusion of power until the very floor beneath them collapsed. And when it collapsed, you stood there, watching, letting them know exactly who had been pulling the strings all along. A knock at the door pulled Adrian from his thoughts. His assistant, a sharp young woman named Lena, stepped in with a tablet in hand. "It's done," she said quietly. Adrian turned, his expression unreadable. "How much did he lose this time?" "20 million in one move," Lena replied. "His investors are panicking. Some are already pulling out. The press hasn't picked it up yet, but by morning," she trailed off, knowing she didn't have to finish. Adrian's lips curved into a smile that was equal parts satisfaction and cruelty. "By morning, Marcus Hale will know what it feels like to be me. But this is just the beginning." Lena hesitated. She had been with Adrian long enough to know that beneath his cold exterior was a man carrying scars that no amount of wealth could heal. "And Evelyn?" she asked carefully. Adrian's smile vanished, replaced by something darker, something wounded but resolute. He set the glass down and walked past Lena, his gaze fixed on the storm now raging outside. "Evelyn will come running back to me when the walls collapse around them. She'll think I'm her salvation. And when she does, she'll finally understand the price of betrayal." The city thundered as lightning split the sky, illuminating Adrian's face for a fleeting second. A face no longer of the man who once trusted too easily, but of a man who had become something else entirely, something more dangerous. The game had only just begun, and Adrian Cole was no longer playing to win. He was playing to destroy. Would you like me to keep this story-style format going for part 2 as well, where the revenge escalates and Marcus and Evelyn slowly realize who's behind their downfall? Of course, here's a 1,000-word expansion of part 2 of Mr. Millionaire Stories, where betrayal meets revenge in a flowing narrative without headings. The night after the confrontation, silence wrapped itself around the mansion like an invisible fog. The echoes of betrayal still lingered in the marble halls, and Mr. Millionaire, despite his wealth and status, sat alone in his study, staring at the glass of whiskey in his hand. The amber liquid swirled with the same turbulence. Boiling inside him. Betrayal cuts deepest not from strangers but from those closest to the heart, and in that moment, he replayed every word, every laugh, every shared promise with the woman he thought was loyal, and the partner he once called a friend. He had built his empire on foresight, sharp instincts, and the ability to read people. But in his own home, within his own circle, he had failed to see the cracks. They were so good at hiding it, at pretending. She with her warm smile and soft reassurances, and his friend with his brotherly gestures of loyalty. Now, the truth scorched him like fire. It wasn't the money they had wanted, it was the man himself, broken and humiliated, stripped of power. They wanted his empire, his throne, and the satisfaction of watching him fall. But Mr. Millionaire was not the kind of man to surrender to despair. Revenge, for him, was not a rash act of anger, it was an art form, carefully calculated, patiently executed. That night, he vowed not to strike with blind fury but with precision, ensuring every piece of their world crumbled exactly when they thought they had won. He took out a leather-bound notebook, the same one he used to sketch out his earliest business strategies, and began drafting his plan for retribution. The first step was patience. He did not confront them again. In fact, He pretended ignorance, masking his awareness behind a calm demeanor. He smiled at her, listened to her fabricated stories, and even raised a toast with the so-called friend who was already plotting his downfall. They believed they were winning, that the betrayal was still hidden, but what they didn't know was that every secret deal, every stolen penny, every whispered conversation was already being documented. Mr. Millionaire hired investigators, digital forensics experts, and silent observers. Within weeks, he had a thick file of evidence so damning that it could ruin not only their reputations but also their futures. Still, he wasn't satisfied. Destroying them legally would be too merciful. He wanted them to feel the slow, suffocating dread of everything slipping through their fingers. So he began the game of manipulation. He fed them opportunities that looked too good to resist. Fake investments, forged partnerships, and business expansions that promised massive returns. Greed blinded them, and they fell for every trap, investing their stolen money, their time, and their reputation. And when they were deep enough that retreat was impossible, the ground beneath them began to collapse. The woman who betrayed him suddenly found her credit lines cut, her luxury accounts frozen. She walked into boutiques with pride only to be humiliated when her cards were declined. Rumors began to spread in her social circle, whispers planted carefully by Mr. Millionaire's network, that she was losing favor, that her lifestyle was built on borrowed time. The walls of her world began to close in, not with a bang, but with a quiet, relentless squeeze that robbed her of the very image she prized most, her status. The friend suffered a different fate. Overnight, business partners withdrew from projects, contracts mysteriously collapsed, and allies he trusted turned their backs. He would walk into meetings only to find the doors shut in his face, opportunities slipping away like water through clenched fists. He could not understand how everything he touched was turning to ash. It was as though the universe itself was punishing him. But behind the scenes, Mr. Millionaire was pulling every string, ensuring every bridge the man tried to cross was already burned. And all the while, Mr. Millionaire maintained his composure. To the outside world, he was the same charming, powerful figure. To his betrayers, he was still the unsuspecting man blinded by trust. They had no idea the storm approaching was of his own design. One evening, he invited them both to a grand gala, an event that marked his company's latest milestone. They attended, dressed in elegance, pretending loyalty, pretending love. But what awaited them was not celebration, it was exposure. In front of investors, dignitaries, and media, Mr. Millionaire revealed the truth. Not through loud accusations, but through a carefully orchestrated presentation that unveiled their deceit step by step. Documents, financial records, photographs, and messages, all displayed on the massive screens that once showcased company achievements. The crowd gasped, the betrayers froze, and their world shattered in the most public way possible. The woman trembled, her reputation in tatters. The friend clenched his fists, unable to deny what was undeniable. They were not only disgraced but isolated, condemned by the very society they sought to impress. Mr. Millionaire didn't raise his voice, didn't gloat, his silence was louder than their cries. He had proven his strength, his foresight, and most of all, that betrayal never escapes the eyes of the betrayed. But the story didn't end with their downfall. Revenge, though sweet, left a hollow echo in his chest. That night, as he stood on the balcony overlooking the city he built, he realized that victory over enemies does not erase the wound of betrayal. It only proves resilience. He had lost faith in people, yet he gained a deeper faith in himself. For a man who has been betrayed and still rises is far greater than one who has never faced treachery. The city lights flickered below, symbols of both ambition and greed. He knew more betrayals would come, more enemies would rise, but he also knew he had become untouchable, not because of his wealth, but because of the strength forged in betrayal's fire. From that night on, Mr. Millionaire lived not for vengeance but for legacy, ensuring that no one would ever again mistake his kindness for weakness. And somewhere in the silence of that mansion, With its echoes of deceit now replaced by the steady hum of victory, he poured himself another glass of whiskey, not as a man broken by betrayal, but as a man reborn through revenge. Would you like me to continue part 3 with a twist where one of the betrayers tries to make a comeback, or keep it final with this revenge climax?